Hey, so out and about, taking the dog out. It's the usual variable weather. I thought it was going to be a nice, warm, sunny day when I was getting ready to take our oldest to rugby, but then the sun miraculously, if that's an okay word to use, disappeared behind a lot of clouds. So actually the temperature dropped quite significantly, which also significantly changed the experience that we all had at rugby, especially with a 6-year-old that only barely tolerates it as it is. But anyway, that's probably a discussion for another time. So I just thought I would use this space to talk to you about one of the things that's been on my mind. I do have a couple of things in mind that I want to talk about, but I'm just going to talk about the one that is kind of calling to me a bit more than the other. And it's just about where my focus is and what I've been doing to try and escape from a mindset point of view from everything that's been going on at work in particular. And I think I've alluded to this quite a lot recently, but I think it's worth articulating because by no means am I in an unusual situation, and by no means am I the only person that feels the way that I feel. But I just thought it would be useful to acknowledge, firstly acknowledge the way I have been feeling, and then secondly just what I'm trying to do to move things on. You know, trying to take a more solution-focused approach to things rather than just having a whinge. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think, you know, if you're having some troubles, then you just need to talk to someone about it, even if you can't think of any ways to fix it. But essentially, if you haven't seen any of the other stuff I've talked about with this, it's quite difficult working in healthcare at the moment, particularly working in urgent care. We're kind of bearing the brunt of a kind of dual-handed thing of a service that's probably not had any attention paid to it for many years, and now we're kind of in the situation where you know, the dynamic has kind of changed throughout the system, and there's a lot of bottlenecks and blockages, meaning that patients don't flow through the services as smoothly as perhaps they once did. So the kind of issues that we only used to see during winter, we now see all year round. So, you know, we've now got probably a ward's worth of patients waiting in our emergency department at any one time. And for whatever reason, I've noticed a bit of a shift in my ability to manage this situation mentally this week. You know, my ability to clinically manage things hasn't really changed particularly, other than struggling for space and having to move people around constantly. But really, what the big change I've noticed is my ability to cope with the things that I can't control realistically. So previously, it was very easy for me. I could just divide them up. I could go, right, well, what can I influence? The fact that there's limited social care placements to get people out of hospital. No, I have no control over that. I have no influence over that either. Can I influence the fact that there's no beds in the hospital as a result of that? I certainly cannot. Can I influence that? Not really. As long as I and my team are still making good decisions about who we admit and who we discharge, which I believe that we do and we always have done, then, you know, I can't really do anything about that. But, you know, increasingly people's, including mine, ability to bounce back from difficult situations is really an all-time low at the moment, and certainly I'd completely include myself in that. That's part of the reason why I've been feeling the way I've been feeling this week, is just really powerless is the word that came to mind when I was talking to someone about this earlier on in the week. So I'm in a position where, you know, I'm a senior member of my team, so I have a lot of people that I line manage, and I have responsibility for what happens in my department. But it's a bit of a kind of double-edged sword. Although I have responsibility, I actually have very little power to do anything about the situation that's going on in our department at the moment. So it's a kind of double-edged sword of being responsible for what's going on, but not being in a position where I can do much about it other than listen to what people have to say and try and be a bit of a kind of receptacle for that. But that, you know, that comes with a cost as well, unfortunately, because I feel, you know, I feel solely responsible for the situation we're in at the moment and the difficult conditions that our staff are working in. But I, you know, hand on heart, cannot identify anything else I can do to make that better, other than just try and be a bit of a listening ear and be lobbying to the people that perhaps do have a bit more power elsewhere in the system to maybe exert some change. So I was really struggling with this week, and so I was just reflecting over the past couple of days on what I had done to try and make that situation a bit better for my mindset. So I was like, well, what's changed? Previously I could just very easily divide things into what I've got control over and what I haven't, whereas this week I was really struggling to recognise the difference. So I'm desperately trying to stop the dog eating various animal poo as we're out walking. So yeah, so I think the first thing I did was that I reached out. You know, I started talking to people about how I was feeling, and I think it got people's attention because I'm not normally someone who would do stuff like that. So I had kind of people checking was I okay, and kind of just reaffirming to me, you know, look, there's nothing that you personally can do about it, and people were offering to chat, which is great, but I've kind of got that end of things covered. So I think we're not very good in this industry of actually telling people that things are not okay. You know, and I'm not struggling. I was just recognising the early stages of just starting to think I can't do this for much longer. When I don't want to do this for much longer, it's really starting to compromise my well-being, and that was really the whole point of taking the job in the place where I took a job and moving the family to where we moved to. But, you know, really seriously starting to get to the point where I was considering my career options. You know, what else could I do? Where else could I do it? And that's, you know, been a long time since I thought like that. But anyway, yeah, reaching out, I think that's really, really important. We shouldn't keep these things to ourselves. You know, I don't necessarily have any expectations of people, but I think, you know, you have to tell them where you're at, especially if you're not feeling great about it. The main other thing I've been doing is just trying to redraw my boundaries a little bit. And previously I have been described as a very boundaried person, and ultimately I was a bit confused by that feedback initially, and then I recognised the fact that actually that's not necessarily a bad thing, and that was how I was preserving the boundaries between those different component parts of my identity. You know, not being the guy that's all consumed by work, but equally not being the job's worth that won't work 10 or 15 minutes more than his finishing time. Yeah, so sort of redrawing those boundaries, trying to re-anchor my focus as well, because I think what I've been doing is I'm ruminating over things that have happened in the past. I'm making a lot of assumptions about what people think of me and my capabilities in my job, and I'm also thinking about the future. You know, is this ever going to get any better? Doubting that it's ever going to get any better. And I was just reading something in a newsletter before I came out for the dog walk, and it was just about the 24-hour rule, and essentially it's the same as taking it one day at a time. So just recognise the fact that no matter what has happened in that day, whether it's been the best day ever or the worst day ever, the next day is essentially the same as turning a page in the book. So we reset and we go again, and I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. But the other thing I'd like to get back to doing again is just trying to touch base with the present and just being a bit more mindful. So I think I had a period where this was really good, and around that time I was doing just very short meditations, guided meditations. So that's something I'm going to try and pick up with again and just incorporate that back into my morning routine. And the last thing I was going to mention is just a bit of escapism as well. So just various things. So I don't want to be thinking about work and ruminating about work and worrying about work when I'm at home. You know, I want that to be my chill time. I want that to be my family time. But what I have noticed is that especially in the sort of 24 hours or so before I'm due back at work again, I do start to think a lot about work, and it does drag me down, especially in the current climate that we're all in. So I think just having stuff to be able to escape into, whether it be as straightforward as just make sure that if you're with your kids or you're with your partner or whatever, that you're immersed in that moment and your mind's not elsewhere. I think that's really important. I've started reading a lot more again, which I think I've talked about in a previous video. So kind of escaping into those things, escaping into things like listening to a podcast and you're being present with that, learning something that's not necessarily job related. Exercise, that's been the other thing, so having a focus that's non-work related as well, so really just thinking about what I'm trying to achieve from an exercise routine. So those were kind of the main things I was thinking about. As I say, I don't want to be the person that's just whinging. I do firmly believe that we need to have some kind of solutions focus to it. I recognise that we can't fix the work situation in isolation. And I do feel a little bit better about that, but I do still worry, but I need to reset and recenter myself. I need to make sure that I redraw those boundaries in an appropriate place where I'm still being helpful to the team that I work with and supportive to the team that I work with, but while I'm still giving myself an opportunity to not be completely consumed by work, because that just really goes against what I believe in big time. So that's a few of my thoughts. I've gone way longer than I intended to, but I'm not massively surprised given the topic. If anyone's got any specific thoughts about this or resonates with that, then please let me know. I'll see you next time.